Welcome to my first video. I'm going to be doing quite a lot of work on the car over this winter, so I thought it'd be good to do a few videos just documenting my progress, mostly just so I can keep track of it as much as anything, but also in case anybody else is interested. But before I do that, I thought I'd do a quick walk around to the car, give you a bit of history on it, what's been done to date, and where we are really. So this is my 1991 R32 Skyline GTS4. So that's the 2-litre straight-six RB20 DET engine. When it came to me, it was pretty much just a shell, and it was bright Kawasaki Ninja Green. So as you can see from what we're looking at now, it's changed quite a lot during that time. So this is where it spends most of its time, generally vying for space with my gym and all of the other crap that I seem to own. Anyway, without further ado, so it's a quick walk around to the outside. So we've got trial front bumper, GTR style grille from Night Racer, which isn't the best of fitments, but it was the best I could do at the time. I'd like to replace that for OEM at some point in the future. GTR bonnet and deluxe side skirts and rear spats. It's currently got ultralight ATEC wheels on, but I've got a set of Ray's gram lights on the way from Japan, so hopefully, certainly halfway through this video series, there should be a new set of wheels coming and being fitted. In terms of suspension, I fitted a set of Meister R's relatively recently, so not too much more to do on there at the moment. And then I'd like to fit some 350Z Brembos at some point in the future. Moving around to the back, it's got a GTR spoiler on it as well, so lots of GTR bits. The idea wasn't generally to turn it into a GTR rep, it was more just I like the look of those parts, so I'm going to put them on my car. Moving to the interior, I've tried to keep the interior looking as standard as possible, with the obvious additions of a renowned steering wheel from America, which I can highly recommend. It's a brilliant wheel, and some Sparco Rev seats, which if you're above about 6 foot are a real pain to fit, because it's very difficult to get them to sit low enough. I've got them sat on a Driftworks super low rail, which means they actually sit in between the rails, and even so they could do with being a little bit lower down. Eventually I might get a set of rails fabricated up just to mount them a little bit lower. Other than that, in the interior we've got a Nismo gear knob, essential, and then some Defi gauges. Whilst it doesn't look like much, I've spent quite a lot of time getting the gauges and everything set up in that order. In the standard GTS4 and GTS-T, the climate control goes on the top, but again I wanted the gauges a little bit more visible, and again sort of similar to the GTR setup. I just think it looks a lot better, and it's a better way to go really. Aside from that, got blitz boost gauge there as well, so between them we've got oil pressure, oil temperature, water temperature and boost. Only other bit we've got in the back, some nice bride cushions, just because I had some bride material, so I got them made up, and the lucky charm that is Zilla. So I mentioned before, the car used to be Kawasaki Ninja Green. Obviously it's not that colour anymore. This colour is actually a wrap. I got it done for my wedding a couple of years ago, and it's called Deep Space Flip, which is the nearest I could get to midnight purple at the time. I think it's a brilliant colour. It looked great in all sorts of different light, and you do get sort of various different subtle colours coming through in it. However, eventually I would like to get the car painted in midnight purple, but that's a little way down the road. So moving on to the most important bit, the engine bay. So I said before that the car was pretty much a shell when I got it. That included the engine. It came with a block that was absolutely toast, and as it turns out the head was warped as well. So I ended up buying another engine from a chap, which was also blown but salvageable. Unfortunately, because it's a GTS4, the engines are slightly different to the GTS-Ts, which means there's not very many of them about. So this was the only one I could find at the time. But I decided to go down the fully forged route with it. Well, forged pistons anyway, race bearings, ACL studs, you name it, all that sort of thing. So it's been built to take. It was always built to take around 500 brake with a little bit of luck. Other than that, on the engine, so it's had an R8 coil conversion, RB26 inlet manifold conversion. It's not something that's that commonly done, but it was a bit of an experiment really, just to see if it would work and if it would give me better throttle response and better spool up really, because obviously the throttle is that bit closer to the engine, it doesn't have to travel quite so far when you open the throttle. Whether it will work or not, I don't know. I've driven it quite a few times since I did the setup, and it drives very well. You have to get behind it because at low revs you've got very little of anything, but once you get up the revs it does go really well. On the turbo side, currently it's just the standard setup with the obvious exception of the HKS mushroom filter, which will be going in due course in favour of a K&N item. But I'll talk more about the plans for that shortly, because that's mostly what's going to be done over the winter. The only other thing else really in the engine bay you can see is Cusco strut brace with a brake booster on it, and also that little manifold at the back handles all the vacuum. As part of the conversion, unfortunately, the vacuum system was lost from both sides, because the conversion is sort of half RB20, half RB26, which meant the vacuum system disappeared, so I've had to make my own one. Aside from a few issues with leaks and stuff, it actually seems to be working pretty well. We're pulling enough vacuum for the brakes, and it works for all the sensors as well at the moment. Ultimately, I'd probably like to put a vacuum pump in for the brakes instead, just to give it that little bit more power on the brakes and introduce less points of failure into the rest of the system. So, plans for the car for the winter is basically to fit this and all the other bits and pieces that I need to get the car to around 500 brake. That's always been the plan. Whether it will get there or not, I don't know, and I'd prefer to keep a measure of drivability rather than have it ultra powerful and undrivable. So we'll have to see what happens with that. So yeah, we've got a Walton Performance manifold, which was custom built to take this turbo, because this turbo's got a T28 flange, so it's not the most usual turbo flange. Compressor racing turbo, as recommended by Stavros, who's one of the tuners on the web that I've quite a lot of time for. He seems to know a lot about what he's talking about, and certainly where turbos are concerned, and he's demonstrated results on an R32 before as well. So yeah, that's a HX32 500 brake capable turbo. Hopefully it should do the job. You'll notice that the exhaust housing is considerably smaller than the compressor, so hopefully that will mean that it should spool up fairly quickly but still be able to deliver the power that I want. And that's going to be mated to a Turbo Smart Hypergate as well, so it'll be externally gated. That's going to be one of the more complicated jobs over the winter, is getting the downpipe built for this. I've got a friend who luckily can do all the welding for me, but I've got to design it. So next steps really is to get the manifold and the turbo fitted, and then start mocking up downpipe and seeing what it looks like. Plan is to go from a sort of a 2.5 inch up to a 4 inch, and then keep a 4 inch downpipe all the way to the rest of the exhaust, which is currently 3 inches. As long as I keep the wastegate separate, hopefully that should be enough to not be restrictive with the sort of power I want to make. So it's going to have, for the moment, it's going to have a screamer pipe that just drops down out under the bottom of the engine. Ultimately, I'd like to silence it, or maybe upgrade the exhaust and plumb it back into the exhaust, because whilst I do like my cars being pretty loud, I think screamer pipe loud is maybe a little bit antisocial. So in due course I'll probably do something to quieten that down, but in the first instance I just want to get it all fitted and get it ready for mapping. So it's booked in for mapping in March of next year, so that's my deadline for getting everything done. I've got a Link G4 Plus to go on there, which should handle all the mapping, and I'm going to fit a tablet as well, so that'll help see what's going on. I've been advised by my tuner to fit fuel pressure and oil pressure sensors for the Link, and also a wideband lambda, so that's going to be going on over the winter. And then the only other upgrade that I really have left to do is the fuel system. Looks like the cat's caught something. So currently we've got this sort of fairly horrible looking affair, which is the standard fuel system and all the wiring that goes with it. I'd like to redo the loom eventually. I'm not there yet, but that'll be on the to-do list. But in terms of the fuel system, I'm going to fit a radiant fuel rail so that I can have it twin feed, so it's fed at either end and then returns in the middle, so you get better fuel pressure across the rail then. Dash 8 probably fuel filter to replace the standard fuel filter as well, and all Dash 8 lines or Dash 6 lines depending on whether it's the fuel inlet or return. And then I'm going to get some 1000cc injectors from a company called NZEFI in New Zealand, funnily enough, that if you believe all the hype, they're a big set of injectors but also will happily idle and run at lower speed. I mean, the calculations I've done suggest that around the 600cc injector would be sufficient for what I need to do. But since these ones give a bit of future proofing and they're supposed to be relatively new tech, I thought I'd go for them, and actually they're relatively cheap. I think it's going to cost me around 300 quid to import them from New Zealand, plus possibly some import taxes and whatever. So considering how much you pay for injectors, even a set of ID13s or something from over here would cost you at least that, and you're getting a much more modern injector for the money. So that pretty much concludes my first video. I'm sure there's loads of stuff I've missed, and I apologise if the quality of the video, the sound quality is not up to par. I'm filming it on an iPhone 11 with a relatively cheap mic setup, so it's, yeah, I don't know how good the quality is going to be, but hopefully anyone watching this, hope you enjoy the video. It may prove to be informative, and if you're interested in the progress of the car over the winter, keep watching and I'll keep posting videos of my progress. May even get in front of the camera at some point. So first job is going to be turbo manifold removal, which generally involves removal of all that pipe work. I'll take the catch can out as well for a bit of room, and then taking the turbo and downpipe off. So I'll have to jack up the car to get to some of the bits. It's not a job I particularly enjoy, mostly because getting the banjo bolts off is usually a massive pain in the arse. But I'll get on with it and hopefully take some video as I go.